Welcome to Thinking Like a Lawyer with your hosts Ellie Mistal and Joe Patrice, talking about legal news and pop culture, all while thinking like a lawyer. Here on Legal Talk Network.
Hello, welcome to another edition of Thinking Like a Lawyer. I'm Joe Patrice from Above the Law. I'm joined today by Kathryn Rubino, also of Above the Law. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I am good. I'm pretty
I'll tell
tired.
you, I was going to say, not to call you out, but you don't look great. You look great.
Oh,
but,
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, it's shots fired out of the gate.
No, I just meant you looked like you had done a lot today.
Yeah.
Was there a marathon?
No, I did just, however, come from teaching a CLE course.
Look at you all lawyerly.
Yeah,
Look at that.
The good people at the New York State Bar had someone someone for things they couldn't foresee dropped out and wasn't able to do the show at the last minute, and their response was to ask me. Now, they asked me, however, while I was at dinner and had been drinking. So I said yes.
Fair. That's not fair.
When I probably should have said no, but
no, it's done.
Yes.
What?
I spent the weekend researching social media and the law, which is something that, while I understand law and social media, is not necessarily a place of expertise for me. So I
fair enough.
did some quick research.
You had to do extra credit to make it all happen for you.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair to say.
Well, did you at least get to tell some stories about terrible things that lawyers do? Because that's what we cover here at Above the Law.
A little bit. I had a little bit of that, but to fill it out and make it actually educational, a lot
as opposed to just funny stories.
A lot more of it was about the ethical obligations to
blah blah blah. Don't be a jerk online.
Yes, but also advertising, like your
sure.
web presence can be construed as advertising and must, stuff like that. Avoiding solicitation issues.
I will tell you, lots of times lawyers are jerks online, though.
I'll tell you, the most interesting question was from somebody in the audience. I was talking about there are provisions about not virtual ambulance chasing. So the usual solicitation rules we all are familiar with, hopefully. That if you, for instance, there are community and neighborhood groups, right? And if an accident were to happen in that neighborhood and somebody tried to jump into that neighborhood group and say, hi, if you were injured in this accident, right? So there's provisions against that, which prompted somebody to say, well, what about the scenario where it is okay for you to just generally post your skill set? If you utilize certain keywords, even without targeting that group, wouldn't it show up there? And wouldn't that raise an issue? And I was like, I don't know, but that's an excellent point. These rules were created long before the algorithm.
Geo-targeting.
The algorithm got this good, So,
listen, lawyers are not known to be the most tech-savvy group in the world.
True.
And I think that coupled with the rapidly changing social media landscape probably means that we're like 5 steps behind.
But theoretically, a social media consultant could tell you to write if you were injured in an accident, to include references to the beautiful blah, blah, blah mountain or whatever. And then it suddenly shows up that way. And where does it cross the line from you're just advertising in that neighborhood to you're specifically saying, I know there was an accident and I'm trying to get
I would think that if the advertisement was created before the accident, it could not
Well, sure. But this is about, is there basically a way to target your solicitation without violating the rules? It was very fascinating. I did not have an answer because that was a quirk of technology that was beyond what the cases who've broached this issue
that makes sense.
To date have dealt with. But I thought that was very interesting. Food for thought for those of you who use this show to learn stuff about the law, which I don't know why you would.
It seems a little weird, but.
Anyway, before we get into our topic of the day, let's talk a little bit about our sponsors. So today's episode is brought to you by your pet frog, who's very mad at you, all because you're still slogging through an endless doc review project. Make better decisions, keep your pet, and work smarter with Logical, eDiscovery software that gets you started in minutes. Don't let frustrating, outdated eDiscovery make you croak. Create your free account today at logical.com/ATL. That's logic with a K, CULL.com/ATL.
Nicely done.
Yeah, well, As I've said on many previous podcasts, we're starting to run out of pets for me to do this with. It's really, we're going to face a crisis.
Do an alpaca next. That's my challenge to you.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know who owns an alpaca, but maybe.
Whatever. I mean, that's your challenge?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have a
fuzzy... No. Shots fired.
Fair enough. Well, let's begin our conversation of the day. We're joined today by Lisa Prowse, who's a Senior Vice President of Legal Services and Document Review at BIA. And we're going to talk a little bit about document review, and I know that's something you know a little bit about, and I know a little bit about.
Yeah, I mean, I spent a little more time than you did on document review.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us today, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thanks. So let's begin by just talking about BIA. So what is BIA for anyone who doesn't already know? I think we've talked about BIA on this show before, so hopefully everyone's listened to this, listen to every episode.
I mean,
like
but
a real
nobody's heard it from
completist.
me. So.
I guess that's true.
And I'm sorry for that for everybody who hasn't heard it from somebody better. But BIA is in the industry. We're an eDiscovery vendor. So essentially we get contacted by, we've got corporate clients, but we also get contacted by law firms to help with collecting data, processing data, reviewing data, producing data, and disposing of it when we're done.
Yeah. Well, that was actually one portion of this CLE that I taught today dealt with the question of social media, which is a form of data that terrifyingly, according to surveys I've seen, a lot of lawyers and in-house legal departments don't even think to collect, even though it's pretty important. And it's something that they need, the help of vendors usually to be able to get and secure and put in a structured form for people to look through.
I literally just did the numbers on that the other day for a different department or for a different purpose, but it was 2 years ago essentially. I don't know that we even had a single request for the whole year, and then last year was, I would say, probably about maybe 10%, and this year I'm estimating it's probably going to be closer to 30 or 40% where we're collecting more mobile data and social media.
Yeah. The survey that I cited in my CLE was that 14% of in-house legal departments responded to the survey saying that they collected, and that was in 2018. So that more or less tracks the numbers you were talking about. Well, anyway, that was a side note.
Well, it is sort of an interesting part of it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And the idea that there's data out there everywhere and people need to begin the process of walking away from the idea that it's a filing cabinet somewhere.
It's
the filing cabinet somewhere.
I'm just going to take the contents of this filing cabinet and look at those.
Digitize them. Yeah, so one of the topics you wanted to talk about was the whole process, sort of document review and the psychology of it. So, yeah.
Years ago, I was a temp attorney. I graduated from law school, practiced privately for about 18 months. I did estate planning and family law, and God bless anybody who still does that. But after 18 months of that, I was, I was crying, and I was like, what did I do? Like, I cannot believe I spent that much money, and I don't want to ever do this. And luckily it was, the beginning, it was early 2000. And so the early 2000s, and, eDiscovery was really just kind of, blossoming. And during law school, one of the things that I actually did, for, side money and to pay bills was I did a lot of database work on the internet. So I had a database background already. So it just kind of made sense when, I heard that you could actually do database stuff and law. I was like, well, that's where I'm going right there. Unfortunately, breaking into that is typically as a temp attorney. And as anybody who's been a temp attorney knows, that it's a horrible job to do.
Very true.
It just is. It's, the whole process is, temp attorneys are really treated like a commodity. And, if you're not fast enough, you will get a call that night and don't come in the next morning. We'll bring somebody else in because there's, hundreds of people right behind you who are willing to do it faster and just as cheap. So, it breeds
maybe
this
cheaper
and cheaper. Exactly. Yeah. And it breeds this whole, this whole mentality where all you're doing is trying to get through documents very quickly. And, and basically quicker than the guy next to you. As long as I can outrun him, then I can stay and he will go. And, at some point, usually, the managers will say, you guys aren't being careful enough, because obviously everyone knows speed is, typically not, coexistent with, being very careful. So, then you start to, in your mind, you're like, okay, am I going too fast? I need to slow down and be careful, but I have to speed up. And so you're constantly, doing that battle anyway, just to keep a job. Like it doesn't have anything to do with the actual work that you're doing. The documents that you're reviewing at that point are meaningless. It's just about making sure that you still have a paycheck at the end of the week.
Absolutely. And I don't know, Lisa, but I actually spent some time in the eDiscovery world myself. I started as a temp attorney and eventually went to in-house at a eDiscovery vendor as well, before turning over a new leaf and starting at Above the Law. But,
a constant stream down is what you were saying. Yeah.
Well, this is the most fun job I've certainly had. It's a lot more fun than Big Law. But, you said you started in the industry in the early 2000s, and I didn't start in the eDiscovery world till 2009. And everyone kind of talked about the halcyon days, kind of before the bust, when, the money ran a lot freer. People were less concerned about margins and about how fast you were doing. How do you see sort of the industry, how it developed from that time period, the early 2000s till now?
2009, when you started, that literally
the worst.
Yeah, well, it was about a year before that was when I was still a temp attorney, and BIA was actually looking to branch in. At that point, they were really just doing everything but the document review portion, and they had a large client who needed document review on a recurring basis. So after trying to find document reviewers all the time, BIA said let's just open a document review center. Like, how hard could it be? So, and they decided, they decided to, locate it so we're in Michigan, and they located it in Michigan. We're 2 hours from Chicago. We're 2 hours from Detroit. It's Midwest, it's Midwest, pricing, not East Coast, West Coast pricing. So, we were hoping to get a little benefit there. And that was what, when I came into BIA, that was essentially what I did. Was I wanted to grow, the document review business and have it be different than temp attorneys. So, I wanted, full-time attorneys who weren't making sure that they got a paycheck at the end of the week because they were salaried. Right. And it didn't matter how fast they were. I needed them to be careful, not fast. So, that's really where, the industry kind of has tried to go. There's still a lot of, temp attorneys that just, they want them to, just go fast and go through a lot of documents, and they don't care. And, if that's a lot of times it's for like a second review or something where there's a huge need to just be fast and maybe not so accurate because it's not really going towards a litigation or something. But, where we're talking litigation, as the years go on, we're doing more and more where they want to, let's use analytics and, let's use all these other tools that we have to augment, the document review. And, that's where the next big, psychology piece comes in is the analytics.
Yeah, I mean, analytics I just came off of a tech show, and so I've been neck deep in
indoctrinated.
Neck deep in people showing me the improvements they've made to all their analytics and their review algorithms too, that take in real time as people are entering things, figuring out, oh, you've clicked the following 3 things responsive, so we can already assume the next 10,000 things are, that sort of stuff. But it's really fascinating how this works. And it does strike me, you were talking about the new psychology of analytics. It seems as though that can only be kind of a help to the poor review situation, in that the analytics can put the person running the review in a position where they don't need to just focus on speed, where they can actually get some intelligence to say, this person may be slower, but they're doing better stuff. Absolutely.
And one of the big things the analytics companies, obviously, they're trying to sell the analytics, and they're trying to sell them, document review is a big cost, and here's a way to, lower your cost because you can get through it faster and review fewer documents. And all of that is true to a point. But where I find the most benefit from analytics at this point is actually, regardless of whether you even use it for culling. And sometimes we've got some clients who literally still review 100% of their documents, but we still use analytics with it. The cost for analytics has dropped so much in the last few years that it does not make sense not to use it anymore, just to get, it's not just the TAR portion of it, the predictive coding type stuff. We also use it to get the email threading and to, identify near duplicates where, 2 documents have very similar text.
Right.
So like, a draft contract versus, the finished contract, or multiple versions of that draft contract. Analytics goes through and identifies all that stuff for us. So, Now, instead of taking, a batch of documents and saying, okay, here's all of Joe Smith's documents, go at it. When a document reviewer is reviewing through that, even if they're, full-time salary and they're trying to be very careful because they can spend as much time as they want, going through that, you still will get big pockets of like non-responsive documents. And the more non-responsive documents you go through, the more your brain goes, wait a minute, maybe I'm missing something. Like, it seems like there should be some responsive documents in here, because otherwise, why would I be, reviewing these documents? So you start to kind of skew your understanding of what's responsive, or vice versa, what's not responsive, simply because you haven't gotten to any of those documents yet. And, we also see a lot of times clients will still want us to try and review documents as a family, right, which means that, if you've got a parent email and it's got attachments, they want you to review all of those at the same time, versus, what we really like to do is review just on the four corners of the document. If you've got, an Excel that was attached to an email, I want to see that Excel, not with the email itself. And the reason for that is we're supposed to be judging each document as considering, whether or not this document itself is responsive to the request. And if we're, looking at an Excel and we look at the email that it came from and we say, well, the email looks responsive, so the Excel must be responsive, that really will skew the analytics and everything else. We need to just focus on the four corners of the document. And that's something that the analytics helps us do, is make sure that we're only looking at documents that we need to look at in line, like with the email thread, and that it is feeding us basically because we're using some type of, like a TAR model.
So one thing that came up while I was listening to folks over the last show was, for those who aren't in this industry, they use, the phrases like TAR. Everyone kind of understands that conceptually, but within the industry, TAR is gone through a bunch of different iterations. And like TAR 1.0 that, you might have been working with in that early 2000s era is not the same as where we are today. Like, the sophistication has just picked up. But one vendor told me that an advantage of their system was that it could kind of be backward compatible with TAR 1.0. And I said, well, why would that matter? And the response was, I thought this was interesting, and to see if it fits with your experience, that sometimes the clients don't trust the technological advancements, but they feel comfortable with 1.0. And so right, the clients are actually saying, slow down, go back to the old thing. We understand that, at least, which I thought was, a real testament to where lawyers, the whole lawyers are Luddites model. But so you're seeing that too.
Yeah, it's very surprising how much they won't trust it. And it's funny because, it's definitely not the same algorithms, but it's very similar to, when you go on Netflix and Netflix says, you've watched these, 18 shows, we think you might like this. And you look and you say, yeah, I actually would like to watch that. I've never heard of that. It's not that much different. It's, most of the models at this point are really, they're it's not like they're looking at specific keywords. It's not like they're looking at anything in particular like that. They're looking for patterns of, it's the measurement of the words, combined with each other, and very, very complex, but it works out really well. And one thing that we found is, if you think back to, the document attorneys who are sitting there and trying to, essentially beat the person next to them. Now what we've really moved into is they're trying to beat the computer sometimes. The computer has said, I think this document is responsive. And they look at it and they're like, well, let me verify that it's right. And you've kind of like, changed that, the fact that they're trying to eat each other. And now they're trying to fight with the computer itself, which really gets very good coding. They spend time, they make sure that they're correct. And, where the computer's correct, they're fine to say, yeah, the computer was right there. And it's almost like, how many people will tune in to watch chess? Obviously, plenty of people, but not a huge amount of people. But the minute somebody wanted to play chess against the computer, a lot of people tuned in to watch. And it's, it's one of those things where we're still in that age where we find it hard to believe that a computer can replace us. And, a computer is not replacing the reviewers here, but it's definitely helping them. And they definitely, will challenge those calls, and it makes for very good, very, very solid coding.
Can you talk a little bit about the ways in which the analytics are changing the psychology of document review? But, you kind of mentioned earlier about how when you're in a batch of non-responsive documents that you sort of spend more time kind of hunting out what's responsive because that you've had so many non-responsive documents in a row. Do you think that's something that's really developed with the advent of the analytics? Because I can certainly remember, kind of back in the day on old school projects where we didn't have a lot of analytics, and it was very exciting to get an entire batch of non-responsive documents because I could kind of get my numbers up for the day.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing is, there was all these things that you would do with, a batch of non-responsive
let
documents.
me grab this custodian. I know they're not responsive.
Exactly. But and that's the thing though, is you weren't really looking at the documents, to make sure that you were sending the right documents out the door.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was just all these other reasons that you were going through the documents. And that's, that's a lot of what we're trying to, change over is, stop treating it in particular, stop treating the temp attorneys like some renewable commodity. Yeah. They're highly educated humans who you literally are hiring to help you answer a court order. And that's what, that's how they're trying to behave. And that's how we should treat them. And you get a much better result when you do treat them that way. And, another thing that I asked earlier, I was like, is there anything I'm forgetting? And one of the guys that works with me reminded me, and it's highlighting in document review it's something that clients always want, and temp attorneys will typically want it too. And it's because it frankly, it makes it, you can go through a lot faster.
The best. Yeah.
But the problem is typically what we're doing is the client gives us a list of keywords and says, here are all of our keywords, highlight these. And here's a list of all the attorney names, highlight these. And let's highlight them in 2 different colors. Let's highlight the keywords green, and let's highlight the attorney names red, which like literally is like nails on a chalkboard whenever I read that at this point, because essentially you've now turned most of the documents into, a Christmas tree, number one.
Right.
Number two, your eyes get highlight fatigue. And, after you've gone through 400 or 500 documents with the same words highlighted, your eyes start naturally looking at the stuff that isn't highlighted because you're tired of looking at the highlights. And, you start to see a lot of stuff and you literally will just look over the highlights and not pay attention. And, one of the things that clients always ask is, well, then, how am I supposed to get through to the idea that this document has all these words? And, for one, if it has, if having that word makes the document responsive on its own, like just because it has the word banana, it is responsive, then don't even have a human look at it unless, it's just for the privilege review or something. Just go ahead and tag it. And, anything that has banana is responsive. But, aside from that, most of the review tools have the ability to put all the search terms, along the side or, in the coding layout itself, so that you still got the list of what words were in that document. It's just not, blaring and drawing your eyes towards those. And you lose a lot of the focus when you've got everything highlighted like that. Not to mention, there isn't a database alive that it does not slow down if you're going to highlight ton of words.
For sure. But, I also think there's a real benefit to the highlighting when you're dealing with larger documents, if you're in a batch of Excel spreadsheets or something like that, where you're like, I don't know where in this 1,100 page document
that must be
bananas being talked about. I don't know.
Yeah, a spreadsheet is one of the worst because they're hard to review on a screen anyway. But yeah, and what I would normally say is, if you're going to use highlighting, limit it to certain things that are really important. Like, you may have a lot of search terms that you've agreed to simply because, you're negotiating with the other side.
But they don't have to be highlighted.
Not really going to be helpful. So, you can pare down that list. But at the same time, you can also, most of the review tools will allow you to, turn on and off the highlighting. Don't ever take that away from reviewers. I know that, there are a lot of managers who will take the ability for, the individual reviewer to turn that on and off. At least if you leave it on, they can, when their eyes start getting tired or they know that they're seeing certain words too often, they can turn that off and just focus on the ones that are important.
And that's kind of going back to your kind of mission that you were talking about getting all of the kind of stakeholders to see reviewers as highly trained, educated individuals, and letting reviewers have that level of autonomy to say, yes, I need it now. No, I don't need it for these sorts of documents. I think is one step in that direction. What are some of the other things that you see that you all are doing to kind of reinforce that model that reviewers are in fact people?
We do a lot of, with the analytics, in particular with analytics, because there's still so much, and it's not so much that it's unknown, it's so much to try and learn on top of the review tool, on top of, the facts of the case and everything else, that, what we really like to do now is take our reviewers who, have been working in, relativity and the other review tools for a decade now, literally. And let them be your guide for the analytics. If we've got 7-8 people on your document review, they all know analytics really well. Instead of trying to plow through and figure out how the analytics works, let them guide you and show you, and basically think of them as an extension of your paralegal team or your legal assistants. They're all licensed attorneys, but at the same time, they're
the ones with their hands in the documents.
Well, and clients are always very, or law firms are very, they need to be able to control the product that goes out, which is absolutely their purview. But we can still help with that. Like there's a lot of things that we can guide them through and show them, and it makes real sense to have somebody who literally works in this day after day to show you.
Yeah, it's one of those situations like the extension of staff is a good analogy, because even though there are obviously problems within firms between how people treat staff as well, but for instance, I would never question the managing attorney's office on what color the backs are supposed to be on some filing I'm putting in, right? Like, I just know this is what they do. They got this. This is their purview.
And that is definitely like getting people to understand that these are subject matter experts in terms of the review process being the subject.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Is real. I have plenty of stories of, attorneys from either the client or from, a law firm, coming in and being very rude and not very respectful of the reviewers. And as a reviewer at the time, I was just like, oh, okay, this is how we get treated now. And it's demoralizing, and it does not help production at all. And it does the opposite.
Absolutely.
Now, you found, if I recall correctly from stories that you've told from that era.
Are you saying I repeat stories?
Or? No. But if I recall correctly, the problem tended to be more of a law firm problem 100%. Than a client problem.
Yeah, that is very true.
That the legal in-house folks had kind of come around. And
in my experience, very much so. And also, in-house folks were also much more aware of and concerned about the overall cost than the firms tend to be, right? So in-house, in my experience, was very happy to use a team of reviewers because they knew how much it would cost if it went to a law firm as opposed to a room full of reviewers. And, we're understanding of that process. And we're also in a position of hiring people en masse at times. And we're just much more comfortable with the process. Whereas the times where we worked with outside counsel, it felt very much like they knew we were taking their work away from them because this used to be easy way to bill out. I mean, I was also in Big Law back in the day, and that was how I spent half of my first year as an associate, right? Was doing the exact same thing I later did for significantly less money. And that they know that. And so I think there's that part of it, as well as just, you're not good enough. There's a very much a clear attitude, I think, from a lot of big attorneys saying that they don't think that contract attorneys are as good at what they do, but that is clearly false.
And that's the thing is we, typically the contract attorneys or, like the ones that we have where they're salaried, they're not going to know your particular case as well, obviously, because, they don't have as much information as you do.
They'll know relativity a lot better.
they know documents and they know, that's the thing is even now I will be surprised at how little a lot of people will understand just how people communicate. They'll give me a list of search terms and keywords, and I'll look at it and I'll think nobody talks like this in email. Like it's just not that formal, and so it won't find the good the documents that you're looking for, and that's it really is. There's if people just could, let go a little bit and realize that, we look at documents, we understand the documents, we know how, people attach them and how they, will say that there's my favorite is always, well, this email says there's an attachment and there's no attachment. I'm like, and how often have you sent an email that you said, here's the attachment, and you didn't attach it? That's what this is.
Oh, look, the next document. Oh, sorry. Yes.
So yeah, it's always, we are more than happy to, augment the law firms, and, we're not trying to take the work away from the law firms either. We just know that we can help them. We can help them, get to, the important stuff so that they can focus on the case, and, let us focus on the documents, and we'll all get to the end together.
Well, great. Thank you for joining us today. Lisa Prowse is at BIA. Thanks for talking about eDiscovery and all the process surrounding that with us. If you are listening to this show, good. If you are subscribed to this show, even better. You should be doing that. You should be giving it reviews, stars, little write-ups, helps us move up the algorithm of legal podcasts. You should be reading Above the Law. You should follow us on Twitter. I'm at Joseph Patrice. She's at Kathryn1. Kathryn also has her own show called The Jabot, which you should listen to, which is about minority and diversity issues in law. You should listen to the other offerings of the Legal Talk Network. And with all of that said, and thank you to Logical for sponsoring. And that's that. All right. We will not probably be around with an episode next week. There's another tech show that we will have to be at, but we'll see. If not, it may be 2 weeks. We'll talk to you soon, though.
If you'd like more information about what you've heard today, please visit LegalTalkNetwork.com. You can also find us at AboveTheLaw.com, ATLRedline.com, iTunes, RSS, Twitter, and Facebook. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.